Why did it always come down to this? A battlefield or family? Lieutenant Colonel Madison Viper Reynolds stood in silence, her body still in uniform, but her heart somewhere between duty and devastation. The dress hung in her closet. Blush pink, floor-length, delicate, hand-picked by her younger sister to match her complexion. And next to it, her own dress blues, pressed, ready, poised for ceremony. She had made a promise. This time would be different. But 6 months earlier, that promise was just a breath on a storm. I'm done with you forever, Madison. If you miss my wedding, I swear. The words hadn't been loud. They hadn't needed to be. They hit like mortar fire, deliberate and final. In the soft-lit bridal boutique, where laughter should have floated in floral-scented air, only the tension of decades past lingered between them. Madison remembered every line of her sister's face in that moment. The way her mascara smudged under swollen eyes. How her lower lip trembled not out of weakness, but from years of waiting. Sophia Reynolds had always been the one left. Behind, she was 26 now, tired of being second to service, second to classified missions, second to medals and missions, and missed phone calls from deserts she couldn't name. 16 years, Sophia whispered, of you choosing strangers over me. Madison hadn't spoken, because what could she say? That she hadn't wanted it to be that way. That every operation, every deployment, every "I'll call you next week" came with a cost she hadn't known how to stop paying. Sophia turned toward the mirror, the dress fitting, the veil, all of it blurred under tears she didn't wipe away anymore. You missed Dad's funeral for a training exercise. You missed my graduation, my engagement party. You couldn't even tell me why, just top secret, always top secret. Madison had stepped forward then, placed her hands on Sophia's narrow shoulders, but it felt like trying to hold back an avalanche with fingertips. I promise, she said, voice like gravel. I swear on Dad's grave, I will be at your wedding. I will stand beside you. Nothing will keep me away. Sophia met her eyes in the mirror. Her voice was soft but final. This one's different. If you break it, Madison, I don't forgive you. At 5:00 hours on the morning of Sophia's wedding, the secure phone rang. Madison didn't need to look. Calls at that hour only came when the world was burning. She stood barefoot in her quarters at Fort Benning, Georgia. The blush pink dress still hung in the closet. She'd even laid out her heels, a rarity, given how often her feet were wrapped in combat boots. Today was meant to be about her sister, about promises kept. She picked up the phone. Colonel Reynolds, Madison, came the voice on the line. Waited with dread. It was General Harrison. We've got a situation. She didn't blink. Go. Venezuela. Hostage scenario. Ambassador Williams and his family, taken by rebel forces 2 nights ago. 2 kids, 4 and 7. Madison closed her eyes. She knew the ambassador. He'd served with her father in Desert Storm. She remembered his laugh, the way he hugged her like family when she received her commission. He'd sent a teddy bear when she was promoted to major. His daughter, Lucy, she was just a baby the last time Madison had seen her. How long? She asked quietly. Rebels plan to execute them in 18 hours unless we meet demands. We don't negotiate. You know that. She did. God, she did. Why me? You're the only one who's led ops in that terrain. You know the escape vectors. You're the only one I trust with this. Wheels up in 90. Her eyes flicked to the dress again. Sophia would be getting her hair done by now, probably laughing with her bridesmaids. She'd promised to arrive early. Security checks, seating rehearsals. Every detail had been combed through, like it was a forward operating base. Madison said nothing, just stared at the dress. Colonel? The general asked. She didn't sigh. Soldiers didn't sigh, but her soul folded in on itself. I'll be ready, she said. Across town, Sophia Reynolds sat under a veil of baby's breath flowers and optimism. Her stylist hands were gentle. as they weaved blooms through her blonde curls. "Your sister's going to cry when she sees you," Emma said, grinning. "She better," Sophia smirked. "I made her swear this time. She's probably at the venue already," another bridesmaid said, probably measuring the exit routes. They laughed, and for a moment, Sophia let herself believe it was true. She hadn't heard from Madison that morning, but she had woken to a text, "Getting dressed now. Can't wait to stand beside my baby sister today. Love you, Soph." It felt like peace, like healing, like finally, she mattered. What she didn't know was that the message had been sent before the call. Madison sat on a military transport, 30,000 feet above the Gulf of Mexico. Her helmet was strapped, but her heart was not. Around her, the best special operations team the U.S. could assemble ran silent briefings. Checked gear, loaded rifles. Madison stared at her phone. Photos from Sophia's bridal shower blinked across the screen. Her sister glowing, surrounded by friends who had said again and again how excited they were to meet the famous Colonel Reynolds, the big sister who never showed up Torres. Her second-in-command dropped into the seat beside her. "You look like someone just stole your dog," he muttered. "My sister's getting married today." She replied. He paused. "Jesus." Madison didn't look at him. "Ma'am," he said gently, "there's no good version of this. I know, but there are kids, hostages." "I know." Torres nodded, and that was the end of it. Back in Savannah, Sophia checked her phone again. Still no call. Still no sign. "Has anyone seen Madison?" she asked for the third time, trying not to let panic crack her voice. Her bridesmaids exchanged glances. Rachel, her soon-to-be sister-in-law, offered. "She's probably just stuck in traffic." Sophia's phone buzzed. A voicemail. She stepped into the bridal suite bathroom and locked the door. Pressed play. It was Madison's voice. And it was breaking. "Soph, it's me. There's a mission. American children. I'm so sorry. I love you more than my own life." And in silence, Sophia stood frozen. The veil trembled in her hands. "She's not coming," she whispered when she emerged. In the Venezuelan mountains, the intel fell apart fast. Compound they'd infiltrated was empty. A shell. A trap. "They're being moved," said Captain Martinez, fuming over his tablet. "Every 6 hours, we're chasing ghosts." Madison checked her watch. The ceremony would start in 4 hours. A new lead, a cave system, 3 hours northeast, but rigged with explosives, booby-trapped, manned. "We'll need 6 hours just to clear an approach," said Park, her demolitions expert. 8 hours minimum. The wedding would be long over. She pulled out her set phone, hovered over Sophia's name. But what was there left to say? She put it away. At 7 p.m. Eastern, Madison lowered herself into a ravine surrounded by explosives. Her body moved with precision. Her heart did not. At that same moment, in a garden wrapped in string lights and jasmine, Sophia walked down the aisle. Her dress flowed like wind over water. Her father walked beside her, proud and gutted. Jake stood at the altar in his dress blues. The guests rose. The string quartet played. But there was an empty space to the left of the altar, a gap where her maid of honor should have stood. And Sophia felt that hole like a wound. She kept scanning the doors, hoping, wishing. But Madison wasn't coming. In the belly of a cave, surrounded by sensors and death, Madison looked into the eyes of 2 children. Terrified, starving, alive. She turned to Torres. "You're in command now," he blinked. "Ma'am? I'm not abandoning the mission," she said. "I'm trusting you to finish it. Colonel, you leave this up. Your career's over. Some things," Madison said, "are worth the fallout." And then she did what she'd never done before. She chose her sister. What kind of soldier walks away from a rescue? Not a good one, not a decorated one, not a promoted one. But Madison Reynolds wasn't thinking about commendations or consequences anymore. Not when her sister's wedding was slipping further behind her with every second that passed. She'd made the call, the one she never thought she'd have the courage to make. "I'm delegating command," she'd said to Torres. "They don't need me to pull the trigger. They need me to make a choice." And she had. Madison was in motion before anyone could talk her out of it, her boots crunching against the rocky trail, the jungle dense with heat and guilt. The evac bird had been rerouted to her position in under 20 minutes. She'd called in every favor she had. No explanations, no pleas, just coordinates and tone. She didn't sleep, didn't speak. The moment the Black Hawk touched down, she was inside, crouched low, headset on, jaw clenched. The rotors thumped like war drums over her heartbeat. Behind her, the operation raged on. Before her, a sister waited. Where is she? Sophia sat alone now. The reception had reached the slow drip stage. Guests laughing at half-empty tables. The band cycling through love songs. The bartender giving out generous pours. Her new husband, Jake, was trying. God, he was trying. But Sophia's eyes kept straying to the door. "She's not coming, babe," Jake said gently. "You heard the voicemail." "I know," Sophia whispered. I can't believe she did it again." He didn't have an answer for that. No one did. The cake had been cut, the toast made, the first dance done without her. Emma had stepped in. Emma had always stepped in. Birthdays, holidays, the one time Sophia was in the hospital after a car accident. Emma had shown up with flowers. Madison had called 2 days later, but this was supposed to be different. This was supposed to be the one day when her sister showed up. She promised. Sophia said to no one in particular. She promised this time. At 23 o'clock hours local time, Madison's helicopter landed in Colombia. From there, she boarded a C-17 bound for the States. She wasn't supposed to be on it. Her name wasn't on the manifest. But her voice was enough. For now, inside the cavernous aircraft, surrounded by crates and silence, Madison remained in full combat gear. No time to change. No desire to her. Mind ran in loops. Sophia in her wedding dress. The sound of her voice 6 months ago. "You break this one, I won't forgive you." She clutched her phone like a lifeline. Torres kept the updates coming. Hostages located, demolitions underway. "No casualties. We've got this." She responded with brief affirmations. But her heart was somewhere over Georgia already. By 0200 hours, Madison was racing across Atlanta in a convoy of unmarked SUVs. A military friend she'd trained with in Qatar was at the wheel. 4 hours to Savannah, he said, eyes on the road. "Give or take. You'll hit the coast by dawn." She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. He glanced over. "You know this is career suicide, right?" "Yep. And you're okay with that?" "No," she admitted. "But I'm okay with missing out on another promotion." "I'm not okay with missing her?" The silence stretched between them, heavy and filled with the thrum of the engine. "Damn," he muttered. "You must really love her," Madison exhaled. "She's my little sister. All these years, she's been waiting for me to choose her. And now? Now, I finally am." The sun was just beginning to bleed across the Georgia horizon when the vehicles turned onto the narrow country road leading to Magnolia Gardens. At 5:45, Madison caught her first glimpse of the venue. The parking lot was still full. String lights flickered in the trees. Music floated on the breeze. Faint now, slower songs. Couples dancing in the dew-soaked grass. The reception wasn't over, not yet. Her pulse slammed against her ribcage. The convoy slowed, and she threw open the door before the engine stopped. Still in combat fatigues, still coated in jumbled dust and sweat, Madison marched, toward the entrance. Inside, Sophia was dancing. Sort of. Her arms were wrapped around Jake's shoulders, but her posture slumped. Her eyes kept flicking toward the double doors. Hoping, searching. "She's not coming," she whispered. Jake opened his mouth to comfort her. When the doors burst open, the music died. Guests turned, gasps, and then silence, Madison stood in the entryway, backlit by morning light, her boots scuffed, her face streaked with grime and tears and camo paint. For a moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, she walked across the polished floor, eyes only on her sister. "Sophia," she said softly. Her voice cracked through the hush. Sophia blinked, stunned. "You came." Madison nodded once. "I promised I would." Sophia's shoulders stiffened. Her voice broke, hard and brittle. "You missed everything. I know. The ceremony, the vows, my dance. You missed all of it. I know. There are always missions, Madison. There's always someone who needs saving more than me." Madison's breath hitched. Her throat burned. "I left the mission." Silence rippled across the hall again. Sophia's eyes widened. "What?" "I left the mission. I handed off command. I chartered a flight, crossed 3 borders, lied to a dozen superior officers. Because I couldn't break this promise." Sophia stared at her, stunned. Madison pulled out her phone. A photo. 2 kids, smiling weakly. The ambassador's children. They're alive. They're safe. My team finished the job, but I couldn't live with choosing strangers over you one more time. The words hit like thunder in Sophia's heart. "I've spent 16 years missing everything." Madison whispered, "I missed Dad's funeral. I missed every holiday, every moment that mattered. And I told myself it was okay because I was serving something bigger." She looked around the room. "But sometimes what's biggest isn't out there. It's right here. It's family." Sophia's lip trembled. "You left your mission for me, for us." Madison corrected, "Because I'm tired of losing the one person who never gave up on me." A beat of silence, then another. Then Sophia stepped forward and threw her arms around her sister's neck. Tears, applause, laughter, the entire reception. Every last person erupted. They didn't care about dust or dress codes or timing. Madison Reynolds had shown up. She gave a speech, unprepared, unrehearsed, unforgettable. Talked about growing up with Sophia, about the letters they'd exchanged when Madison was overseas, about the kind of love it takes to wait for someone for 16 years and still believe in them. She danced with her sister, forehead pressed to hers, a slow sway to their father's favorite song. Camo paint smeared across white satin. No one cared. At midnight, she walked Sophia and Jake to their car, helped her sister out of her gown, hugged her like it was the first time and the last time and everything in between. And when Sophia asked, "What's going to happen to your career?" Madison just smiled. "The Joint Chiefs will probably want my head," she said. "But my commanding officer has 3 daughters. I think he'll understand." What does a soldier do after she chooses her heart over her orders? 6 months passed, not with noise, but with silence, not with drama, but with decisions whispered behind closed Pentagon doors, drafted in files no one would ever see, and softened by the unspoken respect of men and women who'd fought their own wars in the spaces between uniform and family. Lieutenant Colonel Madison Reynolds was not court-martialed. She was not publicly reprimanded, but neither was she praised. What she did that night, abandoning an active hostage rescue to fly halfway across the world, violated everything she'd been taught in 17 years of service, and yet the hostages lived. The mission succeeded. Torres' after-action report read clean, sanitized, precise. Colonel Reynolds directed and oversaw critical phases of the operation, ensuring the survival of all 4 hostages. No mention of her absence during final extraction. No note of the convoy, the wedding, the tears on a dance floor in Savannah. Officially, she never left. Unofficially, everyone knew, and nobody said a word. The Medal of Valor was pinned to her uniform on a crisp March morning at the Pentagon. She stood tall in her dress blues, the silver ribbon resting just below the clasp of her nameplate. A dozen generals watched. From the front row, the President of the United States shook her hand. Cameras clicked. Reporters snapped headlines. Colonel Reynolds honored for saving Ambassador's family. What the articles didn't show was the front row. Not the dignitaries, but Sophia, glowing, radiant, 3 months pregnant. Her hands folded gently across her belly, eyes glassy with pride. And something older, something like healing. Madison saw her, and the noise of the room blurred. The speech was short, the citation shorter, but in the quiet between applause and exit music, Madison caught her sister's eye and held it. Everything. Else, every mission, every medal, faded beneath that moment after the ceremony, while officers shook her hand and old friends patted her back. Sophia made her way through the crowd. "Madison," she said, smiling softly. There it was again, her voice, calm, kind. The same voice that used to narrate bedtime stories when they were kids. Back when the world was small enough to fix with a hug. "Hey," Madison replied, suddenly uncertain how to speak. "I need you to promise me something." The words made her throat tighten. Sophia didn't pause. "When this baby is born, I want you there. Not as a soldier, not as a colonel, just as Aunt Madison." Madison looked at her, at the hope behind the ask, at the years they'd spent breaking and rebuilding, at the baby she hadn't met yet and already loved. She nodded. "I'll be there." Sophia narrowed her eyes playfully. "Promise?" This time, Madison smiled. "I promise, and this time, I'll keep it. But promises, like people, are tested." Madison returned to Fort Benning a week later. Her inbox held over 400 unread messages. Her calendar, wiped clean. A new assignment was waiting. Promotion had been whispered, quietly, hesitantly, but it came with a condition. Overseas command, another deployment. This time for 14 months. The choice was hers. No reprimand, no shame, but a fork in the road that was unmistakable. She stood in her office, staring at the orders. The email was still open on her screen. 14 months. The baby would be born in 6. Her phone buzzed. A text from Sophia. Just heard a heartbeat. Loud and strong, like its aunt. Madison closed her laptop. There was no hesitation. She typed a single-line reply, requesting reassignment stateside. She didn't need another battlefield. She needed time. She needed presence. She needed to learn how to show up. That spring, Madison moved into a temporary role, training cadets at the base. It was quieter work, less glory, more time. She was home every evening by 6, and for the first time in her career, she started keeping pictures on her desk that weren't of her unit. Sophia's wedding photo, a blurry ultrasound, an image of her and Jake, arms wrapped around each other, laughing. In golden light, Madison stared at them often. Not because she doubted her choice, but because she couldn't believe she'd almost missed it. Late May, 2:00 a.m., the phone buzzed. It wasn't a mission this time. It was Jake. "It's happening," he said, half out of breath. "She's in labor." By 2:45, Madison was in her truck. By 3:30, she was pacing a hospital hallway with a coffee she didn't drink, and hands that wouldn't stop shaking. She'd led teams into collapsing caves, crossed minefields, jumped from helicopters into war zones. Nothing compared to this weight, nothing. And then a nurse opened the door and smiled. "She's asking for you." The room was dim, soft, silent, but for the heartbeat monitor. Sophia lay propped against pillows, cheeks flushed, hair damp with sweat. She looked exhausted. She looked radiant. "Hey," Madison whispered. "Hey." Sophia grinned weakly. "You made it." "I said I would." "You always say you will." Madison flinched. Sophia held out her hand. "You kept it this time." Madison stepped closer, and there, cradled in Sophia's arms, was a life, tiny, red-faced, swaddled in a soft white blanket. "She's perfect," Madison breathed. Sophia smiled. "Her name's Grace Madison." The world stopped. Madison looked at her sister, stunned. Sophia nodded, eyes misting. "I wanted her to carry a piece of the bravest person I know." Madison didn't speak. She couldn't. She sat at the edge of the bed, trembling, and when Sophia placed the baby in her arms, she held her like she was holding the whole world, like nothing else mattered. Because in that moment, it didn't. They took a photo that morning. Sophia in her hospital gown, Madison in her uniform, still on from the rush drive. Little Grace sleeping between them. The caption would never be printed in any report. No one would call it a mission. No one would hand out a medal for it. But it was the moment Madison Reynolds knew she'd made the right call. Over the months that followed, Madison visited every weekend. Sometimes she brought books, sometimes groceries, sometimes nothing but time. She held Grace for hours, sang to her in the same gravel voice she once used to bark orders, and Grace smiled when she heard her aunt's voice. Madison had stormed compounds and saved diplomats, but this was new. This was soul work. Sophia would sit beside her on the porch, sipping iced tea. "You're different," she said once. Madison looked up. "You're softer." Madison nodded slowly. "War will teach you how to survive," she said. "But family teaches you how to live." Can a soldier ever really stop being one? Even with Grace's tiny fingers curled around hers, even as the baby's breathing slowed against her chest, Madison Reynolds couldn't stop hearing the ticking, not of a clock, of purpose, of time, of war. It wasn't loud, not anymore, but it was there. The echo of discipline, the cadence of orders, the feeling that somewhere, someone was calling her name with urgency. She had spent most of her life answering that call, training to run toward fire, to handle chaos with precision, to fix the unfixable. But now, when the call came from her sister's house, a request for diapers, help with a crib, a crying newborn, she answered that too, and still, the question lingered. What now? 3 months passed. Madison found rhythm in civilian stillness, morning runs instead of drop zones, baby bottles instead of briefing packets, softness instead of steel. But it didn't come naturally. She still triple-checked locks. She still positioned herself with her back to walls in restaurants. She still woke at 043 with no mission to begin. Sophia noticed. They were having breakfast on the back porch. Grace gurgled in her high chair between them. "You can breathe." "You know," Sophia said gently. Madison raised an eyebrow. "I am breathing." "No," Sophia said, smiling. "You're holding your breath, like life is a ticking bomb waiting to go off." Madison didn't respond right away. The birds chirped. In the trees, Grace cooed softly. It was so peaceful. "And foreign. I don't know who I am without war," Madison said finally. "You're my sister." "Yeah, but what does that mean?" "When I'm not saving anyone?" Sophia looked at her. "It means showing up, changing diapers, laughing at stupid jokes, loving people before they're bleeding out." Madison let that settle. "You think I'm broken, don't you?" she asked quietly. "No," Sophia said. "I think you're rewiring." Back at Fort Benning, command noticed the change too. Colonel Reynolds was punctual, efficient, polished, but different, softer. Some said distracted, others noted her evaluations remained stellar, her leadership admired. But they saw the shift. She declined 3 promotions, all of which involved overseas deployment. She turned down a classified Black Ops role in a task force she'd once helped design. She gave seminars instead. She mentored young officers. She stayed close to home. And for the first time in 2 decades, the brass couldn't predict her moves. Then came the Beirut briefing, a closed-door meeting. 6 personnel, 1 mission. Madison wasn't supposed to be there, but her name was brought up anyway. "Colonel Reynolds could lead this blindfolded," said General Whitaker. Sliding the folder across the table, she built half the infiltration protocol. A young intel officer cleared his throat. "With respect, sir, isn't she, semi-grounded? Still training stateside?" "She's inactive, not incapacitated," Whitaker replied. "Is she even interested?" She be, the general said simply, because this one's personal. 2 days later, Madison received a quiet knock on her office door. She was midway through an email about safety drills at the training center. Her hair was pulled back, her desk spotless. It was the picture of routine. The soldier who entered didn't speak right away. He placed a folder in front of her. Madison looked up. "No way," she said before even opening it. "You haven't." No. He waited. Finally, she opened the file. U.S. Asset compromised. Civilian embedded in Beirut. Exfil requires zero visibility leadership. Prior connections suggest Colonel Reynolds is uniquely equipped. Madison stared. The name on the second page, Amina Kader, a doctor, a friend, once a field medic in Syria. They'd shared a foxhole once during a drone strike in Aleppo. Madison had pulled shrapnel from Amina's leg using nothing but tweezers and an old t-shirt. Amina had saved lives in war zones long after Madison rotated out. Now she was trapped. In Beirut, caught between a covert arms deal and a double agent's betrayal. Madison leaned back in her chair. "This isn't a recruitment pitch," she said flatly. "No," the soldier said. "It's an invitation. If you say no, we'll find someone else. But if you say yes..." She looked at Grace's latest picture pinned on her board, then at Sophia's wedding photo. "Let me think," Madison said. That night, Sophia could tell something was off. They were folding baby clothes in the living room, Grace napping in her swing nearby. "You're quiet," Sophia said. "Just tired," Madison offered. Sophia gave her a look. "No, you're pre-mission quiet." Madison didn't answer. Sophia stopped folding. "There's a mission, isn't there?" Still no reply. Sophia's voice was calm but firm. "Tell me," Madison exhaled. "Beirut. Amina's in trouble. They want me to lead the team." Sophia processed that. "The same Amina you said once saved your life?" "Yes." "How long?" 2 weeks, maybe 3. Silence. "Are you going?" Sophia asked. "I don't know." Sophia nodded slowly. "You do know. You just don't want to admit it." Madison blinked. "You think I shouldn't?" "I didn't say that. I just got here, Soph," Madison said, voice cracking. "I finally learned how to show up. I finally stopped chasing bullets to feel useful." "Then what are you afraid of?" "That I'll lose myself again." Sophia stood up, walked to her, and placed a hand over her heart. "You're not the same person who left that wedding a year ago." Madison met her eyes. "And that's why I think you're ready to go. And come back." 3 days later, Madison sat across from General Whitaker in a dim briefing room. She wore civilian clothes, no rank, no patches. "I'll go," she said. "On one condition." Whitaker raised an eyebrow. "I lead it my way. No politics, no surprises. You give me the team. I get Amina out, and I come home." The general leaned forward. "And after that?" "I come home," she repeated. A pause. "Deal." In the weeks that followed, Sophia watched the clock like she once watched the door. Every hour without a message was an ache. Every baby cry was a reminder that her sister wasn't down the road anymore, but she trusted Madison now. That was the difference. She trusted her to come back. Because this time, Madison had a reason to. 3 weeks later, at 4:23 a.m. Sophia's phone buzzed. One line. "She's safe. We're wheels up. Home by morning." Sophia burst into tears. And for the first time in her life, they weren't tears of being left behind, but of being chosen. Again, at 9:10 a.m., Madison stepped off the transport plane in civilian clothes. Bruised but smiling, Grace was in Sophia's arms. Madison crouched beside them. "Hey, Gracie girl," she whispered. Grace reached out, not hesitating, not unsure, just love. Madison looked up at her sister. "I told you I'd come back." Sophia smiled through tears. "You're not just a soldier anymore." Madison took Grace into her arms and held her tight. "No," she said. "I'm something better." "How do you hold on to something you almost lost?" once the whole world starts watching. Madison Reynolds didn't like microphones. She was fine with radios, comms, encrypted headsets that linked her to a dozen shadow operators in a foreign war zone. But microphones? Podiums? Spotlights? They made her feel exposed. She hadn't joined the military to be seen. She had joined to serve, to disappear into a mission that made sense when the world didn't. She was trained to move quietly, to operate without being known. But now people knew ever since Venezuela, ever since the wedding, the Medal of Valor, the quiet heroism whispered through Pentagon halls. Her name had been lifted higher than she liked. And now, they wanted her to speak. It started as an email from a nonprofit for female veterans and military families. Colonel Reynolds, we would be honored if you would give the keynote speech at our National Courage in Service Conference next month. Your story, your leadership, your sacrifice, your humanity has inspired millions. You represent something bigger than command. She stared at the screen. Then she closed her laptop. But it didn't end there. More emails followed. Interview requests, feature pieces, a documentary pitch from a streaming service. Her story, once private, painful, and wrapped in combat gear and regret, was now public domain. People wanted the soldier who left the battlefield to save her family, the sister who kept a promise, the woman who chose love over orders. They wanted a face for resilience, a mouthpiece for redemption. Madison wanted none of it. What are you afraid of? Sophia asked. They were on the porch again, Grace asleep on Madison's chest, her little body warm and safe. Madison didn't answer right away. Sophia leaned forward. You've survived hostage rescues and mountain caves. Why does a stage scare you? Because it feels fake, Madison said finally. Because the world doesn't know the whole story. They see a happy ending, and they think that's all there was. Sophia nodded. And what was it really? Messy, ugly, gray. I left my team mid-operation. I broke chain of command. I was seconds away from losing you forever. But you didn't, Sophia said gently. I almost did. Madison looked down at Grace. What if I tell the story and they turn it into something it wasn't? Some sanitized version of courage that skips over all the things I got wrong? Sophia smiled. Then tell the truth. The raw version. People need that more than a myth. Madison agreed to speak. One time, no press. No media, just a ballroom in Washington, D.C., filled with soldiers, spouses, medics, mothers, people who knew the cost of service because they paid it in birthdays missed, funerals unattended, moments lost. Sophia flew out with her. Grace came too. They sat in the front row, surrounded by hundreds of strangers who suddenly felt like family. Madison stepped onto the stage with nothing but a black folder and a pounding heart. She cleared her throat. I wasn't supposed to be here today, she began. Not just because I was never the kind of soldier who liked attention, but because a year ago, I came very close to losing everything that mattered. The room fell still. I've led missions that never made the news. I've been in places that don't show up on maps. I've made choices that haunt me. And one of those choices was choosing war over my sister. Over and over again. She paused. The silence didn't feel like judgment. It felt like listening. 16 years, she said softly. That's how long I kept telling myself she'd understand. That duty came first. That love would wait. Another pause. And then she told me it wouldn't. She told me that if I missed her wedding, I'd lose her forever, and she meant it. Madison looked down at her folder. Then she closed it. I wrote a speech, she said. But none of it felt true until now. She looked up. What's true is this. I missed her wedding. I got a call that morning. Hostages, children. I chose to go. Because that's what soldiers do. We go. We serve. We save lives. A beat passed. But somewhere in that mission, somewhere in that cave, I realized something. I realized I couldn't save everyone if it meant losing the one person who still believed in me. Her voice cracked. I made it to the reception. in combat boots, covered in dirt, no makeup, no speech, a small ripple of laughter. And she was angry. She had every right to be. But she didn't shut the door. Madison's eyes drifted to Sophia. Their gazes met. She let me in. She swallowed. And in that moment, I learned something about courage. Not the kind you need to storm a compound. The kind you need to ask for forgiveness. The kind you need to become something new. She stepped back from the mic slightly. Being a soldier nearly cost me my sister, but being a sister, that saved me. Applause erupted, but Madison didn't hear it. She only heard the soft coo of grace in the crowd. After the event, people lined up to talk to her. A veteran's widow, a young cadet, a woman who had missed her own daughter's graduation due to deployment and never forgiven herself. They didn't want a hero. They wanted the truth, and Madison gave it. Quietly, humbly, fully on the flight home. Sophia rested her head on her sister's shoulder. "You did good," she whispered. Madison smiled. "I almost threw up," Sophia laughed. "You sounded like someone who's finally making peace." "With what?" "With yourself." The next day, Madison returned to base. Her inbox had exploded again. Her speech had gone viral. Someone had filmed it. A nonprofit posted a clip. Then the clip reached 6 million views. Suddenly, her name was trending. Not as a warrior, but as a woman who had dared to choose family. Sophia called her that evening. "You okay?" "I don't know. It's a lot, I know, but maybe." "This is your mission now." Madison paused. "What do you mean?" "Telling the truth. Helping others find their way back to the people they've almost lost." Madison stared out the window of her apartment. She thought about all the people like her. The ones too proud to say, "I'm sorry." Too conditioned to choose the battlefield over the backyard barbecue. "You think I could really help people?" she asked. Sophia didn't hesitate. "You already are." That weekend, Madison did something she hadn't done in years. She spoke at a high school JROTC event. No cameras, no medals, just a gym full of teenagers in pressed uniforms who asked questions about bravery and failure, about family and fear. One girl raised her hand. "What's the hardest thing you've ever done, ma'am?" Madison didn't flinch. "Walking into my sister's wedding reception after I'd missed her ceremony." The girl nodded solemnly. Madison added, "And then promising I'd never miss her again." Later that night, Sophia sent her a video of Grace standing on wobbly legs. Her first steps. Madison watched it 10 times, and then again. Then she called. "I'm coming over," she said. "You just saw a video?" Sophia laughed. Madison's voice was quiet. "I want the real thing." What if your redemption was built on a lie, and you didn't know it? Madison Reynolds had learned to live in the light. After Beirut, after the speech, after the baby steps in public healing, life had finally found its rhythm. She was no longer just a soldier. She was a sister, a speaker, a mentor, an aunt. But when the knock came, sharp, precise, 3 taps on metal, she knew that rhythm was about to fracture. She opened the door to a man in civilian clothes, but military posture. High and tight haircut, dead eyes. "Colonel Reynolds?" he asked, though he already knew. "I haven't been colonel in a while," she said flatly. He handed her a sealed envelope. Directive 7 to 9 Echo. Immediate eyes only. She stared at it. No insignia, no letterhead. Black Ops, off record. Dangerous. The kind of envelope that only showed up when the past refused to stay buried. Inside the envelope, 1 photo, 1 sentence, and a name she hadn't heard in 10 years, LT. Commander Elias Knox, Mia, presumed dead. Now confirmed alive, Madison's hand went cold. Knox had been her commanding officer in Operation Halcyon, a mission so classified it didn't officially exist. A deep cover infiltration of an insurgent chemical weapons ring in northern Syria. The op had gone sideways. Knox had been captured, declared dead after a failed extraction attempt, and Madison Madison had been the last to see him alive. Now the photo showed him in the background of a drone shot. Bearded, gaunt, but alive, and seated beside a known arms broker in Yemen. Madison felt the floor shift beneath her. He wasn't just alive, he'd switched sides. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat on her porch, wrapped in a hoodie, watching the stars, like she had as a cadet, when the universe still felt simple. Her phone sat beside her. Sophia had texted. Grace just said, "Aunt." Today kind of sounded like aunt, but we're counting it. Madison didn't respond because now she was back in it, and she didn't know how to keep the light from breaking. The next morning, she met General Whitaker at an undisclosed location, an underground facility hidden beneath a training base in Arizona. She didn't ask how they knew about Knox. She knew how. "Why me?" she asked, standing under fluorescent lights that buzzed like nerves. Whitaker slid a file across the table. "Because you're the only one who knew him before he disappeared, and the only one he might still talk to." Madison flipped through the pages, photos, intel, audio clips of intercepted calls. "I thought he was dead." "So did we," Whitaker replied. "Until we realized he wasn't captured. He was recruited." Madison shut the folder. No, he wouldn't flip, not Knox." Whitaker's voice dropped. "He's selling NATO targeting data to arms dealers. He's funding operations that have killed civilians. This isn't guesswork. It's happening." Madison stared at the cold metal table. "If this is true," she began. Whitaker nodded grimly. "Then the op you were decorated for, the one that left him behind, wasn't just a failure. It might have birthed a traitor." Back in Georgia, Madison sat in her truck outside Sophia's house. She didn't go in. She watched her sister through the window, bouncing Grace gently on her hip, smiling like the world couldn't break them anymore. Madison wanted to believe it, but the shadows had found her again, and this time, they weren't just chasing her. They were asking her to turn around and face the truth. Sophia opened the door before Madison could drive away. "Hey," she said, confused. "You're just going to sit out here?" Madison hesitated. "I didn't want to bring this in." Sophia's brow furrowed. "Is it about Grace?" "No, it's old. From before." Sophia waited. Madison finally spoke. "There's a man I once served with. I thought he was dead. Now they think he's a traitor. They want me to help bring him in." Sophia didn't flinch. "What does your gut say?" Madison looked away. "That I don't know him anymore." Sophia nodded. "But you used to?" "Yeah. He saved my life more than once." "Then you owe it to both of you to find out the truth." 3 days later, Madison touched down in Djibouti. From there, she was embedded with a joint task force specializing in counterintelligence recovery. No flag, no name, just a target. Elias Knox. Their intel led them to Yemen, a private airstrip, supposedly neutral, actually crawling with warlords. Knox was scheduled to meet with a buyer there in 72 hours. Madison reviewed the satellite imagery like it was her sister's wedding itinerary, meticulously, obsessively, refusing to let emotion cloud the plan. But it wasn't the mission that kept her awake at night. It was the question. Had she been wrong all those years ago? Had she left behind a man who wasn't lost, but abandoned? And worse, had she built her own redemption story on the bones of that betrayal? They staged the intercept under moonlight. Madison waited in an abandoned hangar, earpiece silent, hands steady. When Knox entered, flanked by 2 armed men, the world tilted. He looked older, leaner, worn, but his eyes were exactly the same. He paused when he saw her. "Viper," he said, using her old call sign. She didn't move. He waved off the guards. And for the first time in 10 years, they were alone. "I thought you were dead," she said. "I was," he replied. "Just not the way you think." Madison didn't blink. "They say you're selling secrets. They say a lot of things. They say you killed civilians." His jaw tightened. "They left me behind." "Madison, you all did, and I had to survive. I did what I had to. You didn't try to come back. Would you have believed me? Madison's silence was answer enough. They talked for 45 minutes about Halcyon, about what really happened after the extraction failed, about the deals Knox made to stay alive. Some things he justified, some things he didn't. You want to take me in? He asked finally. No, Madison said quietly. I want you to tell the truth. And then what? Then we both face what we did. He looked at her, then nodded. The transport plane back to U.S. airspace was silent. Knox sat with cuffs around his wrists. Madison sat beside him, her shoulders heavy with weight no uniform could carry. She thought of Sophia, of Grace, of all the people who'd clapped when she talked about redemption, and wondered what they would say now. When she landed in D.C., she wasn't greeted with applause. She wasn't handed a medal. She wasn't given flowers. She was debriefed in a cold room for 7 hours. She told the truth about Knox, about Halcyon, about the things no one wanted on record. And when it was over, they let her go for now, but she knew it wasn't done, not yet. Back home, Sophia met her at the door. No questions, just a hug. And when Madison whispered, I think I shattered the version of me people believed in, her sister replied without hesitation, then let them see the real one. What happens when the truth you tell unravels the life you've rebuilt? Madison Reynolds had walked into firefights, into detonated cities, into caves wired with death, but nothing felt as cold as sitting in a silent government office. 3 rows deep in oak-paneled judgment, the military inquiry panel stared at her like she was a puzzle missing pieces. This wasn't a debriefing. It was a reckoning. 3 generals, 1 civilian intelligence officer, a stenographer in the corner, and a clock ticking just loudly enough to remind her that time could turn against you. She had told the truth about Knox, about Operation Halcyon, about the lies that protected the mission but buried the man. And now, that truth was being dissected. We understand you acted on your conscience, the senior officer said, but conscience doesn't supersede national security. Madison's hands were still. It wasn't just conscience. It was clarity. You thought you lost a soldier. Turns out, you created something worse. The intelligence officer leaned forward. And you think that justifies breaking protocol? No, Madison said, but maybe it justifies breaking silence. By the time she left the building, her name was already trending. Not for heroism this time. Not for sacrifice, but for disobedience, for airing secrets, for crossing the line. Colonel, who left battlefield to attend wedding now under scrutiny for exposing black ops details. Loose cannon or whistleblower? Did Reynolds betray her oath? It didn't matter that she had saved lives. It didn't matter that she had told the truth. Narratives were louder than facts. And Madison was once again caught between 2 worlds, one of shadowed allegiance and the other of light and love. She stayed quiet. Not for herself, but for Sophia, because the last time the world watched her burn, her sister had been the one putting out the flames. This time, she refused to bring the fire to their doorstep. But Sophia read the headlines anyway. Jake saw them. 2. Even Grace, who didn't understand the world yet, seemed to sense the shift. The way her Aunt Madison didn't laugh quite as freely. The way her hugs lingered longer, tighter one evening. While Madison sat cross-legged on the nursery floor, building a block tower with Grace, Sophia appeared in the doorway holding her phone. I saw the article, she said. Madison didn't look up. Don't? They're dragging you. I've been dragged before. Not like this. Madison carefully placed another block. You always said you wanted the real me. Well, this is the part no one claps for. Sophia crossed the room, sat beside her on the rug. You didn't do anything wrong. I broke silence, Madison said. And now they want me to regret it. Sophia looked at her sister, her walls cracking again. You're not your silence. You're your choices. And you chose honesty. A few days later, a message came. Not from the Pentagon, not from Washington. but from a group of military wives in Ohio who'd watched her D.C. speech online months earlier. "We're throwing a birthday party for our little girl, first one since my husband died overseas. Would you come?" Just to show her someone strong, kind, and brave? Madison stared at the message. She didn't know what to say. She wasn't sure she was still anyone's idea of brave. She forwarded it to Sophia. Her sister replied almost instantly. "Funny. Grace's first birthday is next week. You'll be there, right?" Madison responded. "That's a promise I still intend to keep." Preparations for Grace's birthday party were surprisingly therapeutic. Madison helped blow balloons, string fairy lights, and hang a banner that read "Wonderful." Above the patio, she found herself at the grocery store debating sprinkle choices. She ordered a cake that looked like a cloud, even though she'd once rationed Mar-Ease during a 72-hour siege in the Hindu Kush. She wrapped a gift by hand, no tactical tape, just glitter paper and ribbon, and for the first time in months, she didn't feel like a soldier or a suspect. She felt like an aunt, like someone who could be counted on to show up. The morning of the party, she arrived early. Grace was already dressed, a soft pink tutu, little silver shoes, a birthday crown. That said, one in felt numbers. She toddled over when Madison walked in and reached up without hesitation. Madison scooped her into her arms and whispered, "You have no idea how much I needed you today." Sophia came around the corner, holding a tray of cupcakes. "You nervous?" "Why would I be nervous?" Madison asked. "It's a party. For a baby." Sophia tilted her head. "You're nervous." Madison cracked a smile. "A little." The guests arrived slowly. Close friends, extended family, neighbors, people who had only ever known Madison. As the woman who made her niece laugh until she hiccuped. They didn't mention the articles. They didn't ask about the inquiry. They just smiled, hugged her, thanked her for the party favors, and when Madison helped Grace blow out the single candle on her cake, something inside her exhaled, deeply, fully. It wasn't the kind of victory they wrote about in field reports. It was something quieter, something real. That night, after the guests had gone and Grace was asleep, Sophia found Madison on the porch, barefoot, holding a half-empty glass of lemonade. "I'm not sure what happens next," Madison said. "Are you afraid?" "A little." Sophia leaned against the rail. "Do you regret it?" Madison didn't answer for a long time. Finally, she said, "No, because I couldn't have stood in front of Grace today and smiled if I'd stayed silent." Sophia nodded. "She's going to grow up and learn all about you." Madison looked over. "That scare you?" "No," Sophia said. "It makes me proud." The next morning, a letter arrived. It was from the Department of Defense, official letterhead, sealed envelope. Madison read it twice, then folded it, placed it on the table, and walked outside into the Georgia sun. Sophia followed. "Well, they're not pressing charges," Madison said. "No demotion, but no commendation either. Neutral? Officially and unofficially?" "They're watching, waiting," Sophia exhaled. "And you?" Madison smiled faintly. "I'm done waiting for their approval. I've got better things to stand for." What if your greatest act of service was stepping away? The uniform still fit, pressed, precise, perfect, just as it had always been. It hung on Madison Reynolds like a second skin. But as she stood in front of her mirror at Fort Benning for what she knew was the last time, it felt unfamiliar. She had worn this same uniform through war zones, funerals, promotions, ceremonies, and grief. Now she would wear it for her exit, not with fanfare, not with salutes or speeches, just a quiet goodbye. The official retirement ceremony had been offered, a full-dress event. Flags, speeches, medals. Madison declined. She didn't need to hear her Zoom read back to her. She didn't want a PowerPoint slideshow of deserts and deployments and daring operations. She didn't want her story wrapped in applause. She wanted a clean ending and a beginning that finally belonged to her. She handed in her final reports on a Tuesday, turned in her clearance badge, removed her sidearm for the last time. When she walked out of the base, no one stopped her, but she did stop herself, just outside the gate. She paused, looked back once, then turned forward and didn't look again. She drove straight to Sophia's. Grace was in the backyard chasing bubbles in the breeze, her little arms flailing with joy, her tiny feet unsteady but determined. Madison leaned against a fence and watched for a moment, watched the way Grace laughed, how her laughter called birds from trees. Sophia came outside, wiping her hands on a kitchen towel. "You're early," she said, smiling. "I'm done," Madison replied. Sophia froze. "You mean?" Madison nodded. "I turned in my papers this morning." Sophia's eyes filled. "Are you okay?" "I thought I'd feel lost," Madison said quietly, "but I've never been more sure." They sat on the porch that evening, Grace asleep in her crib, fireflies blinking around the yard like gentle signals from the universe. Sophia poured tea. Madison didn't speak at first. Then, "You know what the hardest part was?" Sophia waited. Not the medals, not the politics, not even the missions. She paused. It was coming home. Sophia swallowed hard. "You never had to be anyone but yourself here." Madison looked at her. "I didn't know who that was." "You? To now?" "I'm starting to, a week later." Madison got a call from a young lieutenant she once mentored. She'd heard about Madison's retirement. She asked if they could meet. She was facing her own crisis, torn between staying in for another tour or coming home to a mother with terminal cancer. Madison didn't hesitate. She met her at a diner near the base. No notes, no pep talk, just presence. And when the lieutenant cried quietly into her coffee, Madison didn't offer solutions. She just said, "You're not weak for wanting to choose. Love, you're brave enough to make peace your battlefield." The girl looked up, eyes rimmed red. "Did they ever forgive you?" Madison smiled softly. The ones who mattered already had. In the months that followed, she didn't vanish. She just got quiet. She taught a few workshops on leadership and trauma recovery. She helped local veterans navigate via paperwork. She started writing, not a memoir, just fragments, memories, honest ones. But mostly, she lived. She was there for Grace's first scraped knee, her first word, goat, of all things. Her first time running straight into Madison's arms because she knew they'd catch her. And that, Madison thought, was the kind of legacy she'd never had in the field. One fall afternoon, Sophia found her in the yard stacking wood for winter. "I have something for you," Sophia said, holding a small box. Madison raised an eyebrow. "It's not my birthday." "Doesn't matter." Inside the box was a single chain. Not dog tags, not medals. Just a small hand-stamped pendant. It read, "She stayed." Madison blinked. "It's not about your record," Sophia said. "It's about what you chose when it mattered." Madison closed the box. "Thank you," she said softly, "for letting me come back." Sophia smiled. "You didn't come back, you arrived." On the one-year anniversary of her retirement, Madison visited Fort Benning one last time. She didn't go to her old office. She didn't visit the memorials. She went to the training center, and there, in a classroom filled with nervous new recruits, she gave a 10-minute speech. No notes. Just this. Your mission isn't your identity. Your rank isn't your worth. And the battlefield is not the only place courage shows up. She paused. "I used to believe that loyalty meant never walking away, but I've learned something else. Sometimes the most loyal thing you can do is go home." That night, as the sun set over Georgia and turned the world to gold, Madison took Grace outside. They lay on a picnic blanket, Grace curled on her chest, eyes wide at the sky above them. Madison whispered stories, not about war, not about medals, but about strength, soft strength, quiet strength, the kind that doesn't explode, but endures. And when Grace looked up at her and smiled, The kind of smile that doesn't know history, only presence. Madison finally understood what all the pain had been for. Not to become a hero, but to become whole, because some promises don't make headlines. They don't wear uniforms, they don't end in gunfire. Some promises look like showing up, again and again, and never leaving. Epilogue years later, long after the articles stopped printing, long after the speeches and the ceremonies and the questions faded. A little girl in 3rd grade stood up during show and tell. She held up a photo of her aunt. Dusty boots, wrinkled camo, a tired but proud smile. "This is my Aunt Madison," Grace said. "She used to be a soldier, but now she teaches people how not to break." The class clapped, and when Grace sat down, she whispered to her friend, "She's the bravest person I know." Because sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply stays.